Welcome to Buying Sandlot. I'm Kyle Pagan along with Kyle Scott. On today's episode, we're going in on Norway's youth sports model as they dominate the Olympics, and we break down Adam Silver's comments on AI changing how sports will be presented forever. But before we get into the show, tickets for our Buying Sandlot Summit in Philadelphia on April 14th and 15th are still available. Get those over at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this show's description because we've got an amazing set of speakers for you that you won't want to miss. Check out the newsletters. We'll be announcing more every week as we get closer to the event at Ballers. Kyle, Norway is leading the medal count in the Olympics, including the most golds. So obviously the think pieces, the viral Twitter posts, everything else have come out over the weekend, and I want to break it all down. What are your thoughts on the Norway youth sports model as you dive into it?
Norwegians are so healthy looking, all of them, male and female. Such a beautiful species.
They are from Vikings, correct? I believe.
We could learn many things from the Norwegians. Why don't you play back the viral take here, which James covered in the newsletter, and then we'll opine.
Yeah. So this will be the fourth time in a row they've led the gold medal count if they continue the dominance. The U.S., on the other hand, is fourth in the medal count. So, of course, here comes, the think pieces and the viral moments and stuff we were talking about, why the U.S. should emulate the Scandinavian countries' approach to youth sports. Because here are some examples of what Norway does in youth sports. No scores keeping and no championships until 13. They emphasize fun. The national philosophy is joy of sport for all. Culture of multi-sport play with no specialization, which is a big topic we always talk about. Youth sports are much more affordable, even for the elite athletes. No travel sports, and everyone gets a trophy.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I'm imagining the Midwestern baseball 12U dad reacting to not keeping score for another year, seeing how that turns out in America. I know you may have stronger take on this than I. My initial take here is there's a difference between being direct. I think we could directionally move in that direction that the Norwegians are doing, but that doesn't mean just because they're having Winter Olympic success, largely in sports where they have a major home field advantage, and that home field advantage being snow and ice and mountains, right? I don't think it's like this is the perfect model for it. I do think they're doing some things directionally accurate. The emphasis on fun. I think multi-sport is a big trend, and James touched on it in the newsletter. Keeping kids year-round, different movement patterns in many ways winds up being better for them in their primary sport over the long term. And there's a couple of other things here I think they're doing right, but why don't you react, and then maybe we can kind of go through one by one.
Yeah, so Norway's youth sports system, it's obviously participation first because I believe it can afford to be. It operates at a small, centralized scale in a non-commercialized sports economy. The U.S. system, on the other hand, is market-driven, decentralized, and built around elite athletes, clubs, private enterprise. And it's not just about comparing philosophies. You have to, I think, compare economic systems. Like Norway doesn't have a $1 billion college football enterprise, for good or for worse. So, obviously they're doing something right because more than 90% of kids play youth sports. And a country of that size dominating world powers in the games is impressive. And that does start at a young age. But when you compare it to youth sports model, it's apples and oranges in my mind because you have 1 million kids in Norway playing youth sports. You have 27 million kids playing youth sports in the United States. And it's a lot easier to get 1 million kids and parents to fall in line and follow your philosophies than it would be to get 27 million kids and parents to. And then I look at it as most of their success is based on individual sports while they lack success in team sports. They've never medaled in Olympic ice hockey, one of their biggest team sports, one of their most popular team sports in Norway. And they're making their first World Cup appearance since 1998. And they have the best player in the world, Erling Haaland, on their team. So obviously, I don't believe any model is perfect, but you could just as easily, in my mind, point to the deficiencies of Norway has in their system. Then you could point to deficiencies that the U.S. model has, and we've mentioned a ton of them. Now, what you were getting onto, and I agree with, is you should cherry pick some of the things from Norwegian youth sports. Coaches and parents should definitely be open to more emphasis on fun and yet less specialization, which I do believe in being led by guys like LeBron James and Bryce Harper, and parents having so much more knowledge, millennial parents kind of getting into the game does help in that aspect. I do think rec will be utilized more over maybe travel ball, club ball, AAU ball at a younger age, and then holding them out of travel until they're ready, I believe, is a good thing to do. And then we've talked about it multiple times, so we're blue in the face on this program. You got to hope for more sponsorship dollars coming in, and legislation will help the affordability problem. I think that is number one, if not the most. We talked about it today with John McEnroe in the newsletter. He was talking about affordability and stuff of tennis when he was growing up, and his dad was like a lawyer, a partner in a firm, and he was still struggling to pay the bills and stuff. I think that's probably the number one issue and the number one barrier of entry to people playing, kids playing youth sports. And we said it once, we'll say it again on this program. I think after reading this and seeing all the think pieces and seeing all the viral tweets, rec has a great opportunity here, and it'll be interesting to see how they capitalize on it.
Yeah, and I would add my, quote, professionalized rec, right? There's a commercial way to fill that vacuum. Yeah, we're comparing apples and oranges in many ways. You're talking about a country of half the size of New York City, right? So this would be like New York City winning however many golds Norway has. So on one hand, it's super impressive. On the other hand, you're right. A lot of the participation, you figure 55, 60% of kids in the US participate. What percentage of those 40 or so are because they're in, really underserved areas where there's just very little structure and opportunity, and then never mind the cost to put together programs and or participate. So I agree with you that some sort of regulation and subsidy to get more kids active, could get us closer to higher participation numbers. But obviously still in aggregate, we have many multiples. What do they have? Like 1 million or so youth athletes, and we have close to 30 million, right? So you're just comparing two totally separate things. The other thing, and this takes me back to our golf simulate when we talked about golf participation, right? What are we defining as participation in Norway? It's a snowland, right? I imagine, right? It's like Snow World in a Mario game, right? Mm-hmm. Kid skis a little bit, right? Like, is he an athlete? Is he or she an athlete? Like, where are we drawing that line in terms of, is it team sport participation, or is they do something like skiing or cross country skiing because it's kind of like so readily available that we're counting that as athlete participation? So I always like to look at the denominator or the y-axis in these things, and like, you're not always comparing two like things. I think in the US, when we talk about roughly 60% participation, we're talking about like registered, active, playing a structured sport. Might not include the kid who goes out and just plays pickup basketball outside, or jogs with his friend. Nobody jogs with their friends, but you get the point, right? Yeah. Kids aren't
wiffle ball in the backyard, like
wiffle ball in the backyard. Kickball, street hockey, right? What exactly are we counting as participation? So I would say that's one. I think generally, and this focus on like not keeping score, I mean, I hear you, but again, like to your point, their biggest team sports are soccer and hockey, which, they haven't really had a lot of success in. All their Olympic success comes from these individual sports that are on snow. Those things are a little bit harder to keep score from a young age anyway. Right? You have kids going out and skiing for fun. No one wants to time an 8-year-old going down the mountain. It's much harder to put on a basketball or soccer or baseball game and sit there and not tally how many balls go through the basket, how many balls go in the net, how many kids cross home plate. Even at age 6 and 7, kids are yelling at you, what's the score? What's the score? I'm in a rec basketball league now where we're not supposed to keep score. And like every game, there's still a clock there from the older games. One of the spectators goes over and just starts keeping score so everyone can see. And you know what? It's fine, right? It's okay to win and lose. The sports we have lend themselves to that. I do think the focus, travel, championships, right? This is where the tourism dollars come in. The youth sports industry is so built on the tourism spend, traveling, going to tournaments in the US, and obviously that's come down to the younger ages, and it's a great business, but it is also reinforcing the need to win championships from a younger and younger age. And also many times, sometimes you're bringing together, you're not bringing like long-term development. You're coming together for a weekend or two and trying to win over the course of 3 or 4 days. And maybe that isn't always the best incentive. right? My view on this, and I've read a little bit lately about athlete development, and I think where the Norwegians and we could get better is looking at like improvement, right? If you were to start a season, right? The idea is like every team is not going to be able to go from 0 to 100 over the course of the season, but every team can go from 0 to 20 or 20 to 40 or 40 to 60. And I think maybe sometimes in coaching and the way American sports are structured, we're always focused on the championship rather than, hey, this team came together. There's only so much they can grow. Let's focus on just progressing as much as we possibly can. And you may start as the worst team in the league and go from 20 to 40 on a scale of 0 to 100. That may not get you as good as the best team in the league, but that may be okay. If every kid every week is getting a little bit better and building confidence, I think that is the sort of directional thing we should strive for in the US. I think the European countries probably do a better job before it's just like, well, you didn't win the championship, you stink, right? It's so everything in balance. But yeah, I mean, this is like every year, every time the Olympics come around, there's like some trendy story. Before the Olympics, it's the venues are never going to be ready.
Yes.
During the Olympics, it's this country's better at this. And, you know, these stories, I'm willing to bet you can find them every 4 years. It's like a Mad Lib.
Yeah, I think a lot comes down to and what I'm getting at for Norway. It's like the parents have been kind of molded to everyone gets a trophy. I know that one will sting at some people that might be listening. We do, there's people who we grow up and you say this is not a participation trophy kind of culture. We got to be number one in everything. We're a global superpower. We're the United States of America. Don't tread on me. Blah 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 blah. Like that one's going to be tough for people to kind of wrap their head around.
I don't think it is though. Every kid gets a trophy. I think they emphasize competition. I think it's celebrating progress, right? Like if you have a league with 12 teams, only one team's going to win the championships. Does that mean the other 11 teams of 9-year-olds failed? No, right? I think other cultures do a little bit better job sometimes about finding the silver lining in, hey, you developed and got better. Hey, you got better and had fun. And we do that in the US. But everything's not always binary. Win, you're great. Lose, you stink. I think we could do a better job. And where the business opportunity, I think, comes in here again is these like professionalized recreational settings where people are willing to pay to have great fun experiences and develop, fully well knowing they have zero chance of ever playing D1, maybe not even on the varsity team in high school. Maybe they're 13 and they like baseball, but they could see they got 10 buddies who are all thrown in the 70s already, and they're just never going to be able to bridge that gap. That's okay too. And again, as we've seen, there's business opportunities in that, which kind of brings it back to our denominator here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think just the education for parents is going to have to be one of the most important things, is because I think we read a stat off that was like 10% of parents think their kid's going to play D1 or maybe professional sports or something like that, and that's just it's insurmountable. It's you just there's no chance that can happen. So I think a little bit of education for parents and stuff. And I think people, our age, you being an older millennial with 2 kids, me probably have a kid in the next couple of years and whatnot. I would like to think like I don't think little Johnny's going to be making D1. When he's 6 years old and he might have 4 points in a youth basketball game or on a Saturday at I9 Sports or something like that. I'd like to think that people as we grow further along and stuff, and we understand that not every kid is obviously going to play professional sports. Not every kid who starts out as being the guy in little league, jacking doubles in the gap is going to translate to being a D1 player because maybe they stop growing or maybe they aren't able to make the throw from shortstop to first and everything. Like I think as we progress, that's the one thing I think you could separate Norway, and you could take these takes from Norway of being like, we develop these philosophies and that's kind of how we adhere to them, that joy of sport for all.
Yeah. Yeah. And ironically, the kid I grew up with who was the best in town, one of my best friends in grade school and early middle school, that we always played wiffle ball together, and he was always really good. Ironically, he actually went and played in the major leagues. So I'm like, you're like, oh, this never happens. Not long, but he made it.
There was
got
one kid
in Yankee Stadium.
There was one kid that was switch hitting at 9 years old, and he did get drafted. He got drafted by the MLB. He got drafted in the later rounds and stuff. So, I mean, but there were other kids that I can nail at the top of my head that I'm just like, never even knew, where they even went after.
Yeah, I think what people find is everyone enters like that, and then there's this inertia, this gravity of when you hit, like approach 10 or thereabouts, plus or minus. It's some kids are obviously clearly really good, and they just double down and play a lot, and then the other kids who are just mid level, mid tier, or lower mid tier don't play year round. And then they show up the next season, and that kid is now twice as good, right? So on that scale from 0 to 100, that kid went from 50 to 80, and you went from 40 to 50. And it's just like you're swimming upstream, and the pressure to either tap out because you can't hang, or double down and up your workload so that you're on pace with that kid. That is where I think we have the biggest issue and opportunity to support the kid who just wants to play baseball in the spring, just wants to play soccer in the fall, and let them keep playing, and they can develop at their pace. And it doesn't have to be on par with the kid who's playing high level travel and club and progressing to, be a varsity starter his freshman year, right? That's where I think there's just a sheer business opportunity. Parents will pay for that.
Yeah, definitely. And James kind of had this take in the newsletter. We're bullish on the idea, the trend of established single sport platforms thoughtfully branching out into new sports will begin to curb specialization. We've talked about it being under one flag. You play baseball in the spring, you play football, or you play soccer in the fall, and then you play basketball or something else in the winter, and you play under, blah, 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 blah sports.
Yeah. And the tricky part of that, I think, is a lot of the existing clubs, even the ones that are taking investment and are going into new sports, they were generally founded by guys and girls who were played at a pretty high level in that sport and are really passionate about a certain sport. So there's a little bit of this, I think, cognitive dissonance there, that those folks, their experience coming up was really like one sport focus. They're all in on their sport. And now you have to add other sports where maybe the focus isn't as hard on development and becoming elite, but building a well-rounded student. And again, then we come back to that sounds a lot like a school. It sounds a lot like a school. So, and those two things maybe crash together, as we've seen with like San Diego and talking about academies pairing with clubs. Obviously, IMG, I know you're going down there. What they're doing at the high school level, everyone thinks of them as elite athletes, and they are for sure. But they're, I think they have more of a holistic development bend than maybe people give them credit for.
Yeah, I think they're one of the few schools that are able to send D1 athletes and kids to Ivy League schools.
Right.
The entire
separately from each other. Yeah.
So great weekend for the NBA and comments. I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch the NBA All-Star game. I knew it was a new format. People seem to be happy with it, so I hope they continue it. But we want to talk about Adam Silver's comments on AI and hyper-personalizing sports. Here's Adam Silver's quote. As I look at the world and the predictions, we're seeing much of it already on how AI is changing everything about our personal lives and our business lives. For me, there's no doubt that AI will have the same impact on sports. How we're going to be able to hyper-personalize our telecasts. We're about to witness probably the most significant change, certainly in my lifetime, in how sports are presented. So obviously this is coming at it from like a macro pro sports lens, but I think of that this could definitely trickle down to youth sports. Any thought in the any business opportunities for youth sports that you think about when you hear Adam Silver talk about hyper-personalizing sports in the AI world?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds so much like all of the streaming platforms trying to unlock personalized, automated highlights that, Tommy can send to his grandparents, and Susie, can send different ones to her grandparents. So I think that actually works better in youth sports, because Tommy's grandmom probably doesn't want to see Susie, and Susie's grandmom doesn't want to see Tommy, right? They want to see their grandkid. So this is actually a necessity in sports to chop it up and have everyone have a different viewing or after the fact highlight experience. In all honesty, though, I kind of hate this take from Adam Silver. I think every year the NBA, and this for the last, 7 or 8 years ago, this was cool. He gets up and they do the tech day and they show off all this fancy stuff. And you're like, wow, they're so cutting edge. And they are the most progressive of the leagues.
Whatever happened to the jersey that just changes? We're just going to let
That's
that
the
go.
Thing. You never see any of this stuff. Right? They show it off. Oh, look, this jersey. And you're like, this never happened. Last year, The VR, the games on tabletop, I think with the Apple Vision Pro, which I actually, we'll come to that in a second. I think that one actually feels like it could be real. But all this stuff they show up. What was it this year? What was the thing this year that everyone was sort of scoffing at? Oh, the player. It's like you're watching the game from the view of the player. How many video games have tried first person view from the quarterback and were just unplayable? Right? These aren't first person shooters. It's impossible to play a sports game because it's nauseating. Nobody, and I mean nobody, other than a quick replay, wants to see a professional sports game from the view of somebody on the field for long stretches. Yes, in baseball, it's cool to see the umpire helmet cam, as a replay. You generally don't want to watch the game that way. It's nauseating. So, like, they show off all this whiz bang stuff. And I think this was the first year I noticed on social media where people really began to sort of pull up those old highlights and they're like, hey, whatever happened to this? Whatever happened to this? This is all smoke and mirrors. Why don't you just focus on the game itself? And I think the word monoculture has been thrown around a lot lately. We don't experience anything altogether as a society ever. And I think that's a big reason there's so much fragmentation and polarization in society, because your algorithm is as similar as we are in many ways. Your algorithm, Kyle, is certainly different than mine. And it's way different than your grandparents and the person next door and things like that. And sports is one of the last things, maybe the only thing, maybe a little, it used to be like a little bit of cable news, but even that is so fragmented now, right? Sports is really the last thing where people just come together and they all see the same thing and they can all show up and talk about it and experience it the same way. We don't do it with TV shows anymore. And Adam Silver's like, hey, we're going to change that and disrupt that. And it's like, no, nobody wants that. In fact, I'm more bullish on the things like Cosm that the NBA, where they set up, you go and you can sit and it's like you're at a game. These are really cool. I wish there was one in our area. They're not even on the roadmap as best as I can tell in our area. And I do think the Apple Vision Pro and future versions of that are more cost and VR headsets and AR, whatever, by all accounts, the people who've experienced the NBA, the Lakers have a deal where you can watch some of the games in Vision Pro and they set those 3D cameras courtside and it's like you're sitting there. But the reviews I've seen from what they've done so far this year is rather than leaving you in one spot, they felt the need to edit and produce it just like a regular broadcast. So you would be sitting courtside and then next thing your head would jump to sitting on the basket and then you would jump to the second level. That's jarring. The whole appeal of these things is being in one spot, like you're actually at the game. I'm more bullish on that. People being able to maybe have their own view, but experience the game altogether. I hate this idea of everybody having a different experience watching the game. I don't think it ever really catches on. From a business standpoint, I can't imagine that would command the live TV broadcast rights the leagues need. They need those rights because everyone's forced to sit and watch together and see the same commercials. So I don't know. I don't get this one.
Yeah, Cosm is a good idea because I think as we start to see AI more and we start to see our live streamline more and we spend more time on the internet, the want for human interaction will definitely skyrocket, I believe. Live sports, Cosm is a great idea. You go to a restaurant, but you also have like the best seat in the house and it feels like you're at the game.
It's like movie tavern. Same idea.
Yeah. 100%. And then you had Obama's comments this weekend on sports too. He said sports can bring the world together. It binds us together to remind us of our common humanity and stuff.
Yeah. The biggest tailwind, I think, in terms of investment that sports has had from youth to pro has been it's one of the things that brings us together, keeps us human. Maybe the only thing. And from a sponsorship standpoint, brands want and need to be involved in that because you have a captive audience. So, to be honest, I'm not sure why Adam Silver is talking about like the alternative reality where everybody has their own experience. That seems, frankly terrible. And maybe it's just him over-indexing on whiz-bang tech that never comes to fruition anyway. And you mentioned Obama's comments. I would like to point out that the former president, a couple of times in the last week, he was courtside at the All-Star game. He put out a tweet, I think this morning or last night, again, double clicking on sports being the things that keep us human, that bring people together. I don't think that guy says anything by accident. I think part of the reason he's leaning into that is as we hear more and more about AI sports, and I've said this on this show, this is one of the tailwinds in youth sports participation, physical activity, coming together, playing, running around, sweating, all those things are literally the things that keep us human. And add another voice in Barry O talking about, I think I think you're going to see more people lean into that take as AI becomes more omnipresent in our lives. And I think this is just an unbelievable tailwind for the sports industry writ large, all the way down to kindergarten. Sports participation, coming together to watch sports, become more central in society, not less the way Adam Silver wants it to be.
Yeah. So is Grandma going to be using a Apple Vision Pro to watch a Game Changer live stream?
You know, that if anyone actually bought an Apple Vision Pro, that feels like kind of a cool way to watch your grandkid.
Yeah.
Now, I think we'll all settle on 1080p, right? We're still signed to crack 1080p. I don't think anybody's broadcasting 3D 4K yet.
That was a good mention you had in terms of like the Apple Vision Pro changing, you know, from where you're sitting. Like if I'm sitting courtside, I want my courtside vision. I think having it on the backstop actually plays to Game Changers like purpose, you know? Like I don't think if you're at your kid's game, do you want a shot from right field or do you want a shot from center field? I think Game Changer is just, since they're on the backstop and they've consistently been on the backstop, it's just become ingrained in the youth sports culture of being like, we're going to watch a game from the backstop, and people do enjoy that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think these two different use cases. I know some of the streamers are going for multi-view in youth sports, but like multi-view works on pro broadcasts because you have a skilled director telling you which camera to go to. And if you've ever seen those behind the scenes of the guy from the Mets puts out clips a lot. They put it out from the Super Bowl. There's a madman in a truck yelling, take 2, take 3, take 6. I mean, it is nuts. I don't know how they do this for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Otherwise, if you're just hopping around yourself, I don't think it's additive. So I think one camera is probably where we're going to stick for a long time in youth sports. And then on the Apple Vision Pro, this was the take by Ben Thompson from Stratechery. He put a great article. He's a tech writer, if you're not familiar with him, but he's also a big NBA fan. And he's like, listen, watching live sports from the courtside view in the Apple Vision Pro really fools your brain to thinking you're at the game. He's like, it is absolutely unbelievable. So he was pretty bullish when Apple struck a deal. I know we're getting off youth, but it's President's Day, whatever. He was when Apple struck a deal with the Lakers to put these things courtside, and they were going to do a few games. Well, what they tried to do is they tried to broadcast it like a regular broadcast, and they had a director sending you to different cameras. And it's like, no. Like that's a viewing a flat screen experience. But if you're wearing the headset, you're doing it because you want to feel like you're sitting courtside. Like leave me courtside, leave me in one spot, the way Game Changer leaves you in one spot. So I still think we're trying to crack this, but I think Cosm is probably doing the best job of this, where it's like, you know, this simulated reality that you're at a game and you're bringing people together that can't otherwise afford a ticket. But it's like hundreds of dollars to see some games at a Cosm too. It's not cheap.
Maybe the Apple Sports or Apple Vision Pro can make us better cross-country skiers so we can defeat the Norwegians.
There you go. Makes you feel
circle.
Put you on the snow.
Yeah. So you got anything else? You got any other thoughts on AI? Thoughts on, you know, how it affect the youth sports industry?
No, I mean, I think one of the trends, I think we're just going to see this, and I think people like Obama talking about it. I think you're going to see more integration of sports as part of common curriculum in society. I don't see where this ends up in any other way. If nothing else, you know, a few years from now, I think we're going to have more efficient learning. Thanks to if all AI does for learning is just make individualized lesson plans for kids of all ages, you're going to be able to learn more efficiently. You want to talk about like AI coming and giving people different experiences, better off in education than watching an NBA game, right? Kid sitting in row 1, seat 1 learns at a different pace in a different way than the kid in row 1, seat 2, right? If you could really individualize the teaching and the lesson plans, so it's just at like that right balance of like challenging but not overly difficult, you're going to be able to learn stuff in shorter periods of time. And then you're either going to send kids home early, or you're going to fill those blocks with physical activity. You know, more PE class, more structure, more sports participation. We talked about it last week. San Diego, they're talking about partnering academies and sports clubs. I think this is like the giant macro societal tailwind.
Yeah. IMG, 4 hours of school, 4 hours of sports. We'll talk to you on Wednesday when we have more. Happy President's Day for everybody that celebrates out there. And go get your tickets to the Buying Sandlot Summit on April 14th, 15th at buyingsandlot.com. And we'll talk to you later this week.